Welcome back to the Florida Band Podcast. You know why you're here. This is the final installment of our three-part series where we interview Dr. Andrew F. Poore, Director of Bands at South Forsyth Middle School outside of Atlanta, Georgia. We hope you enjoy. How do you balance doing all that while also teaching band?
Poorly.
Middle school band.
Poorly?
Okay. Fair.
I think there are times when I have too many plates spinning. There are times that I wish I did a better job of, focusing those things a little bit better so that I didn't quite have as much on my plate. But at the same time, I think it's the freelance musician in me. So I worked as a freelance musician for a while, and, the word no can't be in your vocabulary.
Right.
Like if they call for a gig and like, hey, do you want to wear lederhosen and play polkas? And you're like, yes. Does it pay scale? Do you want to play Call to the Post at a racetrack? Yes. Does it pay scale? Yes. Okay. So I think I learned it from an early on. But for the most part, because of my current school as a middle school director, we hardly ever do anything on a weekend. Like our weekends are like All-State and Honor Band and All-State auditions. When we played at Midfest, we don't do things on the weekend. So in terms of the actual drum corps, is like I have the flexibility to do that. If I was a high school director, that would be much harder. Right. In the summer, we do 1 week of camp. It's at school.
For your middle school.
For middle school. And then I do help with a couple of I help with Feeder High School a few days. But other than that, I have the ability. So I do a lot of my writing on the weekends. I do a lot of writing on my breaks. I do my writing in the summer. I actually haven't written a band piece in a while. One, I haven't had any commissions. And two, my marching writing has really taken off. And it takes a lot of time. And then like when that's done, a lot of times like I'm on to the next thing. So it kind of fills that window of time that I have to write. So I want to get back. I've played around with a lot of ideas. I've got like some sketches floating around that I haven't like done anything with, but it's just been mostly a time and energy. I have found, I jokingly was talking to Freddie Martin about this, and because Freddie says that every year you do drum corps, it's like a dog year. It's like 7 years old. He's like, so I look pretty good for 243. I was like, Freddie, man, I feel like an iPhone 6. Like my operating system is out of date. My phone doesn't hold a battery.
No longer compatible.
Doesn't hold a charge, and like it takes forever to get to 100%.
It dies in 17 minutes.
Nobody supports it.
Yeah.
Wrong charger.
Wrong charger. So, I have tried to become a little bit more conscious about trying to allow myself more time. So, like this summer with the drum corps, I'm not doing as many days as I did when I was teaching at Spirit. I did 2 days the first week, and then 2 days the next week. And then I'm not there for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to do a couple days right before they go on tour. And then I'll see them at a few shows, and then I'm doing a couple days when they go to San Antonio. I'll see them in Atlanta, and then I'll see them at Championship. So, I mean, most of my work in terms of the arranging, like we had weekly meetings, or bi-weekly meetings every 2 weeks.
The entire postseason, or
most of the postseason, starting in September.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And sometimes we would have a meeting, and then I would have an assignment, like we're going to work on this next chunk,
Okay.
And then sometimes I would have already done that chunk, and then like the battery guy would need to do something, or the front ensemble as sound designer. But I really like their process. They approach it differently than some groups, and I think it has made the process more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
They started out with a storyboard timeline that was pretty specific, like 30 seconds of this, 15 seconds of this. And then the sound designer, CJ Barrow, he's studying film scoring at IU, and so he sketches out the ideas, and he has like a brass sketch and a front ensemble sketch, and it's essentially 2 keyboard voices for each, and then from there we blow it out into the orchestration, and then at that point of orchestration we all have kind of a say as to, hey, I think this needs to be longer, or I'd like to add this, or well, what if we change this harmony to this, and so it's a pretty neat, creative, collaborative process, which is very different than writing by yourself.
So, is that why they call you the arranger?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're kind of coming off of the film scores.
Yeah,
sketch?
so I mean, I would say my job is like
Orchestration as well.
90% orchestration.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe 10% composing, arranging.
Okay. And for your middle school students, I know, well, I'm pretty sure before COVID you were doing a composition club of some sort?
Yeah, we have not been able to do that since
Okay.
COVID. Like, so all of last year, clubs were shut down. And then this year, we really felt like we needed to put our energy into morning band and be present in the room. So, but we have had students submit compositions to the GMA composition contest. And
Oh.
That's cool.
couple of them have done pretty well. I wish a few more of them had stuck with it at high school. I think there was definitely some promise there.
Would one need to be a composer of some level to teach composition, or could we start a composition club at our school? What do you think it would entail? Because I know we have kids that are interested in writing music, but not sure if we have the expertise to really take them, somewhere worthwhile.
Well, so a couple of the mantras that I kind of preach from a composition standpoint that I was taught, that is, composition is first and foremost a solitary act. You do it for yourself. If it gets performed, if people like it, those are all like added bonuses. But you shouldn't write for someone else. You should write for yourself. And so to that degree, when I was teaching, I just wanted the kids to express their voice. And some of them had a lot of great ideas that were really unrefined. Some of them had really random ideas, which probably expressed who they were. Some of it was just pure experimentation, and there's a lot of that I think is important when you're first learning how to write. Trial and error. And I think you could definitely help kids with focusing that component. I think getting them to understand some of the basics of orchestration, that's one of the things, a lot of students will try to write things and they just have no idea that a clarinet can't play that high, or trumpets don't play the same register as the flute and that kind of stuff. And those are all things that you could help with. Yeah. The biggest thing that I tried to get my students to do, and I think that it helped them be more successful, and I learned this the hard way, but I try to get them to focus on small projects, a trio, a quartet, a solo piece, because most of them will try to sit down and write out a piece for band or something, with a lot of parts, and there's just so much from a technique standpoint and just like you can still express yourself creatively using 4 voices.
Yeah.
And I also try to encourage them to write for their instrument. Because a lot of times if they're starting to write, they already have kind of a fundamental understanding of their instrument. And then they don't have to like navigate, how do I transpose a French horn? And how do I transpose for saxophone? And
yeah. What tools would you recommend the students to use to start writing? MuseScore or anything like that? Or
a lot of my kids use MuseScore. If I feel like a student is serious about it, I try to push them toward Finale, because the Finale student price is not super expensive, and for my population, they can easily afford it. Like if you really want to write, and this is something you really think you want to do, then you should go buy this program. Now, Sibelius is a subscription-based program that you pay annually. So some people say it's. I've learned both. I still say that Finale is the industry standard, and it's the more powerful tool. But there's definitely upsides to Sibelius as well.
okay.
I think the best thing about Finale is you just buy it and then you own it.
That's true. Yeah. What about upgrades?
Upgrades are relatively inexpensive. They're like
Oh, okay.
$100.
Okay.
But you can buy an upgrade once every 2-3 years. Whereas Sibelius, you got to buy it every year. I started learning Finale in 1993. So I've invested thousands of hours. So I'm super fast at it. I just started learning Sibelius because that's what Music City uses. So I had to get versed in the program. And so if I have time and I don't need to really hurry, I can do things in Sibelius super slow. But if I need to write fast, which I often have to,
Right.
I don't know the mathematical percentage, but I would say I'm at least 5 to 6 times faster on Finale than I am Sibelius when it comes to note input. And there are some features in Finale that I think are, like, for the longest time, Sibelius made Finale better. So having a competitor makes another product better.
Right.
But there are things that Finale it's easier, more intuitive. There are some things that Sibelius does that's really fast. I like how they put in crescendos and decrescendos. It's super easy. But I use the explode feature a lot when I'm writing, and it helps with my voice leading, and it helps with my orchestrational spacing, and it's fast. I can do. Like, I'm not a great piano player, but I can go way faster on Finale with using that explode feature.
Never heard of that feature.
Yeah, I have to try that.
So the explode feature, so like say you want to voice some harmonies, say in your trombones. I can go on my piano and I can like, okay, I'm going to do this chord to this chord to this chord to this chord. And so my fingers are doing the voice leading, and I can feel when the voice leading is disjointed because you're moving your hand a lot. You do that means the players are
Doing that same jump.
same thing.
Yeah.
So I can input the harmonies, and I can do the rhythm, and then you'll see the 3 parts, say in the first trombone part. You just highlight that, you go up to explode, pull down, explode into how many voices? 3. Click on the box that says trombone 1, and it'll explode from trombone 1 to 2 to 3. And it'll just go way faster than going to
Part 1, part 2. Right. You said competition with Finale and Sibelius. Do you promote competition in any way with your middle school students? Healthy competition in any way?
Yeah, so this is a complicated question.
Oh, sorry.
And I know a lot of people have very different opinions about it, so I respect everybody's different opinion. For me, I think there is the nature of music. Like I know the Bartok quote, like when he says like competition is for racehorses, or something like that.
Okay. Jamie, look it up.
So, but here's my thing. Yes, the nature of making art is not competitive.
Okay.
I agree with that. However,
oh my gosh.
the nature of
You just had to be on the podcast.
the nature of the music business, the business of music, highly competitive.
Right. Okay, so with those two
So
dichotomies.
I offer competitive opportunities for my students. I think there is value in competition in doing something and seeing how you compare. We are inherently doing something subjective, so is it as stable of a metric as grading a math test? No. Which is where the murkiness comes in. I do believe, though, that there is value in teaching students to work toward a goal and see if they got better. And in order to do that, you have to measure it. And if you're measuring it, there's inherent comparison.
Okay. Yeah.
Every single math test they take, those students compare. You ever have your students walk into your classroom and go, "What'd you get on the test? What'd you get on the test? What'd you get on the test? What'd you get on the test?" It's competition. All right? Now, the difference is everybody in theory could get 100. Can only have one first chair. However, having students working toward a goal is an important part of the motivation, because I believe in the three pillars of internal motivation are autonomy, mastery, purpose. Mm-hmm. And when you take away one of those pillars, it's like a three-legged stool. It's not going to stand. Take away autonomy, structure it too much, you take away motivation. Take away mastery, there's no point to doing what they're doing because they're not growing, they're not getting better. If you take away the purpose, then why am I getting really good at something when there's no reason why? So you have to have all three. Mm-hmm. So to me, competition can be one of the components of purpose. It can be one of the purposes. It shouldn't be the only one.
Yeah, you're right. It was Bartok, and he said competitions are for horses, not artists.
I find it interesting that some of the most anti-competition people in our profession do it from the place of some of the most competitive schools of music in our country. And can it get out of control? Absolutely. You will be in the land of milk and honey, and you will achieve amazing things, but they will own you, and you will sell your soul for all of those things. And if you're willing to do that, then go there. But you need to go into it wide-eyed and knowing that it is a hyper-competitive environment. Can competition get out of control? Absolutely. Can it be healthy? Absolutely. Is it a part of our reality in the music world? Yes. But more importantly, even if a kid's not going to be a performance major, not going to go to Florida State University or North Texas or University of Texas or Michigan or whatever, learning how to compete effectively and healthy in an appropriate manner is an important life skill, because they will step outside our doors, they will step into the real world, and they will have to compete. And they need to learn what it feels like to fall down. They need to learn what it feels like to fall down and get back up and work differently. They need to know what it looks like to, I worked this hard and I made this progress, and I worked this hard and I only made this progress. And they also need to learn, because this is part of competition, sometimes you work really hard, sometimes you do all the right things, and sometimes you still don't get what you deserve. That is an important life lesson. And there's not many places where they're going to get that outside of our classroom. And so I feel like part of the educational process includes that. So we have students that compete effectively for All-State. We have students that compete effectively for District Honor Band. We have students that try and don't make it, and we still encourage them. I don't require it, because I don't feel like that's something, if you're not mentally ready to go all in on that, nobody should make you do that. So we have that as a component of our program. It's something that we put on the wall. We list the names. We recognize that accomplishment. But I don't make students do it. And if a student signs up and then backs out, I don't make a big deal out of it. I just don't. Because they're not ready. Like, if they're not ready, the worst thing you can do is go to an audition, fail miserably, be traumatized by that. So like, if they come to me and they're like, I'm not ready, okay, don't go. The only ensemble we do chairs is our top group.
How do you do the other groups?
So, well, let me qualify.
Okay.
So we do chairs in the top group primarily for part assignment, and it's also a motivator. Like, those kids, they want to climb that. They're the highly motivated kids anyway, and they want to climb higher. So it is used as a motivator, and but it's also primarily for part assignments. In the on-level group, the students, they take basically the same chair test as our symphonic band students. So that is a motivator for them, but it's optional. So if you want to be considered for the top chairs in your section, you take the same chair test as symphonic band. It's also a way of me teaching those kids, hey, you could do this. It also gives them something to work toward that might be more challenging than what they're already doing. So it helps that top tier, second band level kid continue to work. And we only seat like the top few chairs of each instrument. And we do that so that the last chair kid doesn't know he's last chair.
Right.
Now, kids are smart.
Yeah.
They know, little Johnny isn't playing his parts. They know, what I mean? But we don't formalize it.
Gosh. Felix has returned.
I guess when it comes to competition, I think each teacher, and when I taught my Columbus State class, it was something that I preached. Like, each teacher, that's a personal question. You have to value it against what your school and community expect. You need to align it with your personal views and your personal goals and the goals of your students, and then find a healthy balance between what Bartok said, art versus competition. My whole thing with a lot of the people who are anti-competition in the music area, a lot of times use it as a way of justifying not being very effective.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons.
They were like, I don't really push my kids to All-State. I don't really do District Honor Band. Like, we don't go to competitions like high school directors.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in competition. And then you look at the product and.
Well, how do you end up with so many in All-State and District Band?
I think because
If you don't require it, or what do you do?
we make it a personal choice, and I think when it's a personal choice, and we've really preached effort, performance, and attitude, and they've bought into a growth mindset, and they understand deliberate practice, that they invest in the process differently, and because they do, I think the results are greater. And it's coming from the student, not from the teacher. So that drive to get better, and the recognition that comes with that, comes from within. Like, the program doesn't get anything externally from those students doing that. That's 100% for the student. Now, we celebrate the student. We celebrate their hard work. We celebrate the students that came up short. I mean, I share the list of students who passed the second round, and I make a big deal out of that.
Okay.
It's the process of a product.
Oh, absolutely. This whole
I
conversation.
mean, a student who passes to the second round of Allstate has already put themselves in a pretty elite percentage of students statewide. Because you have to assume an overwhelming majority don't even try. And then another large clump of people try but don't pass. And then, so if you pass to the second round on flute, you're one of the top 100 flute players in the state. You pass to the second round on trumpet, you're like one of the top 75 trumpet players in the state.
It's a big deal.
Absolutely. My last question is, I was just gonna ask you to Three Bears in. Go over one more time. You said your beginner pacing. You said it started with. Yeah, if you guys didn't know, we've been drinking this all the time. Your beginner pacing. You said you start with rhythms, note naming.
Oh.
Note
So
recognition.
our process that we teach and we actually use it with our advanced students too. We believe that rhythm comes first. That belief comes from that music is a temporal art. It occurs in time. And because it occurs in time, rhythm is the driving force. So we preach rhythm, and that a little silly thing I always say with them, that's because the right note at the wrong time is a wrong note. It doesn't matter how many right notes you play, if you have bad rhythm, they're all wrong. So that's why we preach rhythm. So before we play any line in the book, we count it. We preach tapping your foot. I don't spend a lot of time clapping rhythms, really, because I want them to be able to verbalize it, because the verbalizing is what has to go on inside their head. And I don't want to spend a lot of time trying to clean people who clap with their hands 3 feet apart, and people who barely move their hands, and then like the sloppiness of the rhythm. So I'd rather just focus on the counting. And then after we count it, especially early on, really like the first 9 weeks plus, or even a little bit further, if it's something new, we'll do note names. And to do note names, you have to really slow the tempo down. So typically we do rhythm at one tempo. I use 90 a lot. And then when we do note names, we'll like slow it down to like 70. And they'll have to be able to tap their foot and count it. So now they're scaffolding note names with rhythm, because they're saying the note names in time. They're not just saying the note names. Once that is pretty consistent, then we'll add fingers. So then they'll hold their instrument a certain way, and they'll say the note names and move their fingers. So we're trying to connect that interpretation loop of I see the note, I know the note name, I make the finger, that creates the sound. I tell my percussionists that when we're doing fingers, that's when they're air drumming.
And note naming, are they counting?
They are So
they're on snare.
No, they're just counting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they're on keyboard, they're saying the note names.
Okay.
But in time. And then the fourth step is what we call on air. Some people call it air and valve. Some people call it tizu. Airplay. It goes by lots of different names. But we use airplay as a way of training articulation. I tell them on air's sole purpose is to connect articulation to tempo and articulation to rhythm. And then we play it. So as we're scaffolding each line, and then we tell them if you want to work ahead in the book, now you have the tools. Just count it, say the notes, do the notes and fingers, try to do it on air, then play. And by giving them that process, that allows those that want to, they have the skills to move ahead and go faster. And some will, some won't. But it works pretty well for those. And what we've found is like a student will come in to do their pass off. And they're like, hey, I'm ready to do stripe 3. And they'll start to play the first line and it'll be not good. And the first thing we ask them is like, have you done the steps? And they're going, no, I just tried to play the line. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go, okay, well, let's do the steps real quick. Say the rhythm. Usually a couple tries, they get it. Okay, say the note names. A couple tries, they get it. Let's add fingers. Maybe they get it on the first try. Let's do it on air. Let's play it. Boom, they just caught the stripe.
Mm-hmm. Question.
And then we go...
Of course.
and then,
question.
And then we go, so see, if you had just done the process before you came to see us, you know, we could have done that faster. So what's your question?
Again, emphasizing process over product. Still.
No, it's great. But if you just made the kid practice and they got the... You're saying they get the stripe after you sit there with them and make them do the whole process themselves. How is that mastery? How do you consider that mastery?
Well, they demonstrated the skill.
But not on their own.
But they demonstrated the skill.
You don't send them away and say, okay, I just walked you through all that. Now if you can show me next time that you can do it, that's mastery. And then you pass?
I mean, I guess you could do that. For me, it's about like, can they perform it? And then I will tell you that when they...
That's Felix with a bottle cap.
The first few stripes, we would absolutely give it to them right away.
Okay. Because progress is a motivator.
Later stripes, if they come to us and they say we haven't gone through the process, and we're on stripe 6, we're like, okay, do you know the process? And they'll go, yeah. Okay. Why don't you go work on the process and come back?
Okay.
But like those...
But some of those early skills, I mean, don't you want those set up really, really well?
I think for those early skills, what you want them is to feel success.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
You want them to feel like, hey, I can do this.
Okay.
That is a very powerful motivator. Progress is the most powerful motivator, I think, for students.
I feel like too many people see that as a sacrifice and not really as an investment. Where you're saying, you know, when you're earning those early stripes, where you would kind of have a little bit of leeway in what you would say, okay, let's give this student the stripe. Whereas in the later stripes, you would ask them, you know, continue to do it until it's, you know, at the level where we're expecting it to be. For the sake of them seeing, hey, I can do this. And you are saying that the difficulty of the earlier stripes is lower than the later stripes, right? So
yeah. So I'm glad he's having fun. It's a different type of cat.
Well, now we have like 6 that we can give him. But I think what I'm trying to say is I feel so many people will be like, from day one, and especially me, I've had to come over this idea and this thought of, even on the first one, I shouldn't have any kind of you know.
Well, so
I don't know. I just feel like I don't know.
I think I kind of understand.
Okay.
So
Bad with
for
words.
me, I guess I just come from a place of watching students struggle and eventually succeed. And I've also seen students struggle and quickly get discouraged and then want to quit. And so for me, I don't feel like it's a sacrifice. Let's be honest. There's not a huge difference between Three Blind Mice played really great and Three Blind Mice played okay. Now, if I was coaching Mahler 5 opening trumpet solo, there would be a huge difference between okay and great. But I'm not teaching that kid. I'm teaching the kid who's trying to make their first sound. They're trying to count a rhythm. They're trying to decode notes. They're trying to make a tone. They're trying to articulate. There's a lot of scaffolding that has to happen. And what we want is them to feel like, okay, I can do this. And then when these students would do that, I would always go, okay, so next time you come, we need to have gone through the steps. And then I really need you to work on tapping your foot. Or I really need you to get better. You're tonguing in the wrong spot. And so we give them things to work on. It's not like we just do the pass off. The pass off is really just a moment for us to listen to them individually. And it's a little bit of accountability in terms of growth. Because it's a clear metric. Like if you can play, line 17 versus line 108, you've gotten better. And that's a tangible thing that the kids can see.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's say a kid comes up, tries to play line 12 in the book, which is one of your stripes, I think, and early stripe, and they play it out of rhythm, articulating in the wrong place, or not articulating well or at all, maybe. You walk through the steps with them. They can play it to a level that you find is passable, but they're still puffing their cheeks.
I think I would look at the totality of the skills they demonstrated and then try to help them get better where they're deficient, especially early on. If a kid's close with the rhythm, but then they're maybe speeding up or slowing down, or if they're pushing down wrong fingers, that would be like, okay, we need to work a little bit more on our fingers and then we'll try again.
Okay.
But if like the growth and development of tone and embouchure takes so much time.
Okay.
Like if we held back every kid until that was perfect, I think the progress would be so slow that a lot of them would get discouraged. At least that's what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for me, at least initially, and like if they're struggling with tone, like this is a big thing with flute players. Like a lot of them struggle with tone initially.
Mm-hmm.
Oboe same. And then I'll always say, look, how much are you doing long tones? And almost every time a kid is struggling with tone, they're like, oh, you mean the first thing we do every day? Yeah, I don't do that at home. I was like, well, I really think you need to do more of that. Because that right there, I said, we do it first, not because we want to waste time, but because it's most important. And then I'll point to the board, like focus, listen, what's the third word? So that's where you work on that. And then, so I don't want to hold up them passing a stripe. I want them to try to get better. And growth is not always linear in terms of
It's never linear.
every aspect of their musicianship. And I think if you hold everything back until every aspect of the musicianship is perfect, I think not enough kids pass through that filter. And I feel like my job is to give them a good experience in middle school. My job is to give them skills. It's to teach them how to perform and to be good people and good musicians. My job is not to create virtuoso. And so if a student steps into a high school band room and all they can do is their middle school range chromatic scale and 4 major scales, and they've played grade 3 and 4 level music. That's a pretty successful middle school. And I have students that, a majority of my students can do that. I have some that are below that. The bell curve is real.
Okay.
But I also have students that can do some pretty outrageous things beyond their skill set. Because when it comes to like scales and stuff, I'm a big believer it's more important to do a lot of things to expand your technique on fewer things than it is to learn a lot of things that you'll never use. So, like, for example, I push 3 octave scales with my clarinets from a pretty early age. Once they've developed their embouchure and they can start playing above the break with some effectiveness, I try to get them to play their full range chromatic and to play their concert F scale 3 octaves and their E flat scale 3 octaves. That is absolutely something that they will use way more than the key of concert C flat.
So instead of teaching 12 majors 1 octave, you're teaching 4 major scales at max octave.
We cover
speed
6.
Okay.
Eventually. My 6 are C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat.
Okay.
A majority of my kids will be able to do the 4 middle school scales pretty well. Some won't, most will. Some will be able to do more than the octaves that are required. But I believe in expanding their technique and teaching them that, because I think one thing, a lot of kids will like, oh, I can play my scale, and they'll play it at half notes. And they'll think playing their scale in half notes is, I can play my scale. Okay, that's step 1. It's not really usable. Like, so we have to teach them the levels of technique and technique development. And you can do that much more effectively with a limited scope. Like teaching them how to play 3 octave scales, if you're trying to do all 12, that's a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it's skills that aren't relevant to anything that they're going to play in the near future. Like if they want to go to college and they want to be a college music major, then definitely they need to develop that skill set. But I still think I've played in professional orchestras. I think the number of times I've played in the key of C flat, I can count on 0 fingers.
No, I get it.
Yeah. True.
And I've played a lot of hard music in my life.
Back to so you kind of went over their practice process, the process for learning a song or a scale and things like that. But as far as let's say your first year students, their first year or their first semester, what is the pacing week to week? Like, what is your order of skills that you teach? And do you teach any simultaneously? So for example, we front load with rhythm and note naming and other theory things before we even start the fitting process, so that when they get the instrument, we can go ahead and start making sounds, and the note naming and rhythm is already covered, so it's a little easier for them to approach, songs in the book.
So I do something similar. It takes us about 2 weeks to get everything situated with testing and fitting.
Okay.
And in that 2 weeks, we do a lot of note names and rhythms and basic notation, and spend a lot of time with that. Once they get on the instruments, you still have to do more of that.
Yeah.
So the first few weeks on the instruments, it's all about creating a sound. And so, like clarinets, it's mouthpiece, barrel; flutes, it's head joint; saxophones, it's mouthpiece, neck; double reeds, it's the crow. I've started having my bassoons play with the vocal, just because it's a little bit easier to create the crow with the correct sound. And we're checking for pitch. For brass, we do buzzing. Some people don't. We do buzzing. And My whole thing with the brass for the first few weeks is 2 open notes. That's your goal. You got to hit 2 open notes. And for some of them, they may be way too high, and some of them may be low. And then once they can start to manipulate pitch a little bit, which is a lot of what we teach with the mouthpiece, then we want them to recognize what pitch they're playing. So we do a lot of name that note, and so we'll play for them, concert F, concert B flat, concert F, concert B flat, concert F, concert B flat. So we'll play it a few times for them, and then we're like, who wants to go? And they'll shoot their hand up, and then somebody will play, and then what note did they play? Like all of them raise their hand. That was the F, and then, what note was that? B flat. And then sometimes we'll go, what note did you play? Just like the kid who volunteered. And most of the time, they'll get it right. Sometimes they won't. But that process is always voluntary. I don't do a lot of down the line.
DTR, down the road.
So that takes a couple weeks. While we're doing that, we're applying the rhythm, note names, fingers to the first few lines in the book. The woodwinds are always ahead here. Takes them a little bit longer for the fingers, but I don't push the brass until I have a majority of the group hitting the concert F and concert B flat.
Do you have a brass class and a woodwind class?
Yeah.
Okay. So how have you navigated that with your 7th and 8th grade beginners? Because I know you had them in one class, right?
It was a little slow.
Pull-outs, basically?
No, because
No?
I had to teach the 7th grade beginners by myself. So at times you just have to go, okay, brass, percussion, I need your patience. I got to work with the woodwinds.
Okay.
And woodwinds, I need your patience. I got to work with the brass, and then you just have to kind of juggle that back and forth.
Yeah.
So for me, we go really slowly for the first 9 weeks. Relative to my stripes, the first 9 weeks is stripe 1.
Oh, okay. Do you do a concert that first 9 weeks with the first year kids? No.
And then we'll cover stripe 2, 3, and 4 in the second 9 weeks.
Okay.
So once we have a foundation and they understand the process, we can put the pedal down and move faster. We do our first concert in December, and we play some lines out of the book, and we play that Louie Louie arrangement and then we play a couple other pieces that I've written on that. So, and we'll have the different sections play a line out of the book so they can hear the flutes and the clarinets, and to just kind of demonstrate kind of where we started. And then the first 9 weeks is our technique builder number 1, second 9 weeks is technique builder number 2, third 9 weeks is technique builder number 3, and then we start to introduce some of the components of our daily routine in the fourth 9 weeks.
Got it.
And that's what we use in the 7th and 8th grade.
Okay. Okay. Oh, one more question.
Always.
When you were at 482 students, do you think that was kind of the cap of your potential growth, or do you think it could have been even bigger if COVID hadn't hit eventually? Just out of curiosity.
If COVID hadn't hit and we had maintained our normal retention, we would have exceeded 500.
Okay.
I mean, our retention sits anywhere between 90 to 94%. Some years it's 90, some years it's higher.
Are there other schools in the area or that part of Georgia doing the same thing?
What?
Same kind of numbers?
Well, yeah, in my county, Lakeside is going to be over 500. Riverwatch has been over 600.
Yeah, they have.
Um,
What do you think? You think it's years and years of culture, or do you think it's?
well,
What
Lakeside.
do you think attributes to that? Lakeside is new director.
Yeah, it's
right?
Reggie.
So, yeah.
He's recruiting really well. He's been able to get a lot of FaceTime with the kids, and he's done a lot of personal correspondence and flyers, and He's retained really well.
So what do you think plays into that retention? What do you think are some key?
Well, he does a lot of the same things we do. He has a lot of the same principles of growth and purpose and the internal motivation things.
All right, so what I haven't been hearing the last 3 hours we've been recording is pizza parties,
Nope.
trips, free class periods.
Nope. I mean, so we do travel.
Oh, yeah.
And so like our Disney trip is an important thing. We're doing it back-to-back years because I had a lot of kids that didn't get to go this past year. Just because they were virtual, they moved in too late, we'd already signed up, and the trip was full. So we are going back-to-back years, but our normal pre-COVID routine is we travel with everybody is eligible to travel. It's of course optional. We do that every 2 years. That way a student will have an opportunity either in their 7th grade year or their 8th grade year. Our symphonic band does do additional travel. In 2020, we performed at the National Band Association Southern Division Regional in Louisiana. We were on our way to the Music for All National Concert Band Festival. We've performed at Troy University at the SUS event. We've performed at the University of Alabama, which was an overnight event. So they'll do some extra traveling. We played at Carnegie, which was really cool. But that's again not all the time, and it's dependent on the invitation. And
so it's not a key retention factor, you don't think?
I think one of the key retention factors, at least with our top group, is that we do. My kids love to be challenged. They love a challenge, and so the fact that we do performances with music that challenges them, that really does motivate them.
Okay.
I think the mistake a lot of people make when they talk about, oh, my kids don't practice, so why would I do anything? So they don't do anything, so the kids don't practice, and it becomes this negative cycle.
Mm-hmm.
My mentor, Bill Miller, a longtime band director, he's in the FBA Hall of Fame. He told me you need to get your kids in the routine of performance and perform regularly. Don't give them a ton of time to prepare the music. Because if you give them 9 weeks to practice it, they're going to take 9 weeks to practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a piece of and so what I do with my fall concert, which always happens within the first 6 weeks of the semester, is I give them a piece or two right away that are kind of challenging, not too hard, but achievable. And then I always give them a piece about 8 days out from the concert. And then I tell them, hey, we'll perform it if you can prepare it. Guess what? they prepare it. I've never had to pull the piece. And I do that too.
And is it also achievable, or is it a little harder?
It's not super hard. No.
Oh, okay.
But the idea is like, here's a piece of music, go learn it. If you've taught them the process to teach themselves, then they can go do that. If you haven't, then they can't. But I think if you give kids too much time to prepare, they're not going to practice. And if I was a really good player and you put a grade 2 piece of music in front of me and now I'm going to spend 9 weeks practicing it, I'm not going to practice.
Yeah.
So what about for assessment? Like LGPE and MPA?
I mean, I don't do that for LGPE.
Okay.
I mean, but the LGPE program is thought through a little bit differently.
Okay.
I mean, if we want to go into programming, like I don't
Sure. What are your core tenets for programming? Would you come up with? Do you have to leave?
It's okay.
Okay, as long as you're good.
Past 4, so
Hey, as long as
you
you're
just
good.
said you was going to leave at 4.
When it comes to programming, there's so many things that you're looking at.
Yeah.
What can the students do? I always try to pick a stretch piece. I try to pick some other pieces that are achievable. We typically do 3 to 4 pieces on our concerts.
Per group.
I try to put in something fun, and I always try to build skills. So like, hey, have we done anything in 6/8? Have we done anything in cut time? Have we Are we covering our scales, like the key signatures? Have we played in minor? Have we played anything that was a transcription? So I'm always trying to find that balance, and I keep a large list of everything that we've played.
Is it electronic that can be referenced?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
I have a hard time remembering sometimes. Like, we played this like a couple years ago, and I'll think it was like, 2017, and it was like, no, it was 2019, or like, man, we just played this, and then it was like 2015. And I was like, okay.
Feel that.
I worry about that less with middle school, because if it's a good piece of music and they can learn and it can teach concepts and skills, and I don't really need to worry about it. If none of those kids have played it, I don't need to worry about it that we played it 3 years ago. So I mean, I'm always looking at trying to find that balance between all those things. I will say too that I have become more sensitive to programming varied composers. So like this year we did 3 pieces by female composers, and did 4 pieces by African American.
Do you see an impact on those demographics in your band when you program that stuff, or do you
I don't really
talk about
I mean, I have girls in the program. We don't have a lot of African Americans, but I think it's important for them to know that if for nothing else, a lot of these composers that are what some people would call underrepresented, it's underrepresented in that. Here's my definition of underrepresented. Go to JW Pepper, type in their name. If you get less than 30 hits, they're underrepresented. Because there are some composers, type in their name, and you will see over 500 hits.
Meaning they have 500 pieces of music for sale on JW Pepper? Okay.
So widely published, widely accessible.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of those composers that you might only get 30 hits, they may have like some chamber music, and they might have a jazz band chart. They may have. So it doesn't necessarily have to be based on ethnicity. It really has to be creative voices that we don't hear enough.
Okay.
And for me, I've enjoyed that process of seeking out new voices.
Okay. So. Another question popped in my head.
But when
Okay,
it comes,
Christian, this is
but
your
when it
last
comes
question.
when it comes to LGPE, it's a little bit different, because for me, LGPE, it is a showcase of their skills, and you do want them to be successful. So whatever you put in front of them, it has to be achievable in the time that you have allotted. It is a slightly higher standard, so the expectations are a little bit greater, and so and for me, it's about finding pieces that fit the group. When it comes to, this part is strong, this part is not so strong, and then finding a piece of music that will fit their strengths and weaknesses.
My last question.
Okay, it's your last one.
Liar, liar.
Do you do
Pants on fire.
any breathing with your students?
A little bit. I don't do anything that's really structured.
Okay, or routine?
No.
Okay.
We have really limited class time. The biggest thing that we talk about is sitting tall, getting your arms away from your body, and we talk about how to breathe that. And when we're doing on air, we talk about breathing. But I don't do a lot of formal breathing exercises. When we do pull-outs, especially with like the large bore low brass and like the low reeds, we will do some breathing with them, like to get them to understand that, hey, you can take a deeper breath than you're taking.
Do you do timed breathing? Do you train that at all?
No, I mean,
To start notes together and things like that.
I mean, we do some things on air. Is that what you mean?
So do you have a set way that they should start breathing in every time you count them off, or?
I don't
Have
get
them
to
start.
that level of detail. No.
Okay. Just curious.
I think the other thing about breathing too is that the breathing requirements of each wind instrument is so widely different. I mean, really what you want to do is just take a full relaxed breath. You don't want any tension. And so the biggest thing is posture, and then arms away from the body so that the lungs can expand. And if you can get them to do that, I think that's a good foundation. I mean, let's face it, we don't need them playing loudly. We don't need them playing loudissimo.
Mega forte. That's what I heard the other day.
We're
MF is mega forte.
we're not on a marching field.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, a lot of my kids, the first thing we have to do is get them to control their air. Like, I mean, when they're beginners, they'll like take a deep breath and just like, you know, and we're like, no. We gotta control that sound. And so I don't really want them taking a ginormous breath and trying to play more air through the horn than their embouchure can handle. Because that doesn't really teach them anything. It just teaches them how to make bad sounds. So it's much better to get them to make a good sound. And then as you start to develop longer phrasing and longer lines and things related to range, a lot of that breathing will start to become like a natural outgrowth.
Christian's making another note.
I have another question.
You're
Told
on
you you were a
questions
liar.
for today.
Do you model for your students?
So that's a good question. I was a trumpet player, and I say that in the past tense. I have a master's degree in trumpet from Cincinnati. And I played professionally, but then got really bad TMJ, and I fought it off and on for about 10 years. Like I would play, and then I'd rest, and then I'd play, and then I'd rest, and then I'd play, and then I'd rest. And then it was 2009, I think it was. Had a really bad flare-up. Super painful, and I just reached a point where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And it just wasn't worth it. Like the constant like playing, not playing, that yo-yo.
Getting back in shape every time.
And then the pain that followed was just... so what I do model, I found that I can play euphonium, and it doesn't really affect my TMJ. So I play euphonium, I'll demonstrate some on trombone, and I tell my kids, like, I'm not going to play clarinet. I used to demonstrate on clarinet, and I think it also aggravated my TMJ. I'm not going to demonstrate. I'm terrible on flute. Like I can make a sound, but it's so opposite to the trumpet embouchure, and just too many years of reps. I just can't get this relaxed and focused enough. I do think it's helped me be a better flute teacher though, because I go through their struggles, and I know how to kind of help them. So my flutes are usually pretty good, but I think it has to do with the fact that I suck at it. Not that I'm really good at it and can demonstrate for them. It's because that my embouchure and like, because I can relate to the problems that they're struggling with.
Well, what would you say to the idea of,
and with tuba, I can't play super low. Like there's just too much my mouth and muscles. I can get there eventually. So that also I think helps me teach my tuba players, because I can relate. When they're stuck up high, and I can relate to helping them get down low. But as to modeling, like picking up a tuba and like honking out a low F, I can't do it.
Right. Well, what would you say to the idea that if you can't play it, how can you teach it? So like if, for example, you said flute, you're just terrible at it, but how is it you end up with great flute players? And what do you say to a flute player that's maybe a little ornery and goes, You can't even play the flute. How can you teach me how to play the flute?
I'll go, show me the trill fingering for I F sharp. And when they can't, so that's why I can teach you.
Okay.
Properly count 6, 8, 16th notes. Oh, you can't? Oh, I can help you. I mean, I've never had anybody do that.
Right, of course.
I bring in a flute teacher who can model, who's phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I bring her in. That's why I tell them, like, this is a person who has been devoted a large portion of their life to mastering this instrument.
Mm-hmm.
It would be disingenuous for me to try to say, play like me, because I hope you can play way better than me.
Very true.
Yes.
You know, and I don't have a problem with telling people that I have a jaw disorder. You know, you wouldn't look at a coach who's coaching track who has knee issues, who can't run.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they spent
Or
large portions of their life running track and
or a
was great
baseball
at it.
coach who blew out their elbow and can't throw anymore.
Yep.
You know, so I think if you can model and showing that versatility, I think is a very effective tool. I would make sure though that if you're doing a lot of modeling, that you're not skipping the steps where they aren't just copy paste.
Yeah. Rote
Mhm.
teaching type.
You want to make sure that they're doing the other things that are building like deeper levels of understanding. But there's a lot of value in the oral experience and copying what you hear.
Okay.
All right, Christian, you don't have any more questions.
I actually don't.
You're looking at that laptop like.
I'm looking
I got
because
one
I'm
more
just making sure I hit
question.
everything, but and we're almost at 3.5 hours, so
This is gonna be multiple
it's
episodes.
gonna be about 6 or 7 episodes, maybe
We're gonna break it up.
maybe 3 or 4. We'll see. Yeah.
Probably 3.
Maybe 3 or 4, depends how long. Okay, I need a break. I mean, that was very thought provoking. Thank you for sitting and talking shop with us.
Yeah, thanks for
And
that.
answering
Thank you.
Christian's 10 million questions.
Questions I'm sure you guys would have asked as
I
well.
know.
Well, that's that. We hope you enjoyed this 3-part series with Dr. Poor. I want to take a moment to thank him for coming down to hot and sunny South Florida to work our little middle school band camp and for agreeing to be on the podcast. He's been a mentor of ours for 8 years, and we are still learning from him. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in, and hope you stick around for future episodes of the Florida Band Podcast.